Hey, it's Dr. Schmidt at the Nutritional Healing Center of Ann Arbor. The purpose of this video is so that you can identify bad science within 15 seconds of your web page loading up. And I'm going to go over these 7 studies. It's going to be quick, but I got to give you some information before we dive into these. So now these 7 studies I pulled them from a YouTube channel, and the YouTuber was saying that here we have 7 journal published peer-reviewed studies showing that low-carb diets shorten lives. And he's promoting a high-carb diet. He's saying that sugar is good, and like whether it's fruit or bread or pasta, you got to have a high-carb eating style to live longer. Okay, but I took the time, I clicked on all 7 of these, and they're all junk. And I'm going to show you how to find this out. It's super easy, and then that way you're not swayed by somebody who has another agenda, not necessarily for your health, but for some other purpose. They say things like this. Okay, so here's the information you need to know, and there's really 3 very important things, and I'm going to go over 5. But number 1, is it an observational study? There's other names for observational studies, and I'm going to read all of this to you. If you're doing the dishes or you're driving or something, you can pay attention to what you're doing and just listen to my voice. So is it an observational study? Other words are controlled longitudinal study, uncontrolled longitudinal study, epidemiological study, cross-sectional study, and then you got case studies and case reports. Okay, if it is an observational study, you can ignore it because you're the end user. And I wrote this down. For the end user, such as a patient like yourself or a doctor like me or other doctors, the study needs to be a randomized controlled trial or a clinical trial. Okay, now there's one caveat to that, and that is actually down here at number 3. What is the relative risk hazard ratio or odds ratio? So RR, HR, or OR. And you'll get a number from these 3 things. Now usually a study just has one of these 3, like most commonly like a relative risk. And if that relative risk is 2.0 or higher, then it's something to pay attention to. If it's 2.0 or lower, you can basically ignore the study. And I'm going to give you a couple quotes on this here before we move on to like nail that home. Okay, now if the RR is 15.0, then yeah, that's something to be concerned about. Or 20.0, that's something to be concerned about. But maybe, yeah, 4.0, yes. Okay, so if it's greater than 2.0, then a hypothesis can be formed, and then it graduates into a trial or experiment where something is actually done rather than just observing. Okay, so then a clinical recommendation and or a lifestyle change can be implemented with confidence since truth is discovered from an experiment. Truth is not discovered from an observation. You can get facts from an observation, okay, and opinions, but to get real truth, you have to do an experiment. You have to do something instead of just watching. Truth is not discovered in an observational study, only an educated guess, also known as a hypothesis. So 90 or 95% of nutrition studies are actually a hypothesis. You can only get an educated guess from them. Okay, and then number 2 in the middle, I skipped around, but we went from number 1 to 3. Now we're at number 2. Food questionnaires are not reliable to a fault. So a lot of these observational studies are from food questionnaires where they have people fill out a questionnaire. What's your diet like in the last year? What have you been eating for the last 6 years? Okay, here's number 4. Now this one gets a little bit complicated because you really got to know the field of nutrition. And what I'm saying here is that dosing could be wrong. And I'm going to show you out of these 7 studies, one of them had incorrect dosing. Therefore, they came to the wrong conclusion. Okay, and then one last thing, I'm going to go over the word associated. The definition of the word associated is connected, accompanying, joined with another or others. It doesn't mean caused. Okay, so let's move on to the next thing here. Here's this quote. There's 2 quotes. One is from Dr. Shapiro in a journal called Pharmacoepidemiology and Drug Safety from 2004. This is key right here. This guy is in the field of epidemiology. And he says, quote, "In adequately designed studies, we can be reasonably confident about big relative risks." So there's that RR, so that could be like 10. It's a big relative risk. Sometimes we can be only guardedly confident about relative risks estimates of the order of 2.0. So 2.0 is guardedly confident that we can come to a conclusion with that. Occasionally, we can hardly ever be confident about estimates of less than 2.0. And when estimates are much below 2.0, we are simply out of business. So like 1.1, 1.3, we're out of business. They're worthless. Epidemiologists have only primitive tools which for small relative risks are too crude to enable us to distinguish between bias, confounding, and causation. All right, here's the next quote from Bofetta, Journal of National Cancer Institute, 2008. "Epidemiology is particularly prone to the generation of false positive results. Further exacerbating the problem in epidemiological studies is the search for and reporting of weak associations, among which the potential for the distorting influence of bias, confounding, and chance is further enhanced." Okay, so we need to stay away from weak associations. All right, so let's talk about these studies. I'm going to go to this first one right here. And I know the print is small. Like I said, I'm going to read everything here that you need to know. And I did do some highlights right here. So the title of this is from a general population cohort study, okay, on PubMed. And a cohort means group. So general population group, they did this study. And what it said, here's their relative risk. It's 1.22. So that's too low. We're out of business. So throw this away. And now in the conclusion, it says that prolonged consumption of diets low in carbohydrates and high in protein is associated, there's that word, associated, with an increase in total mortality. But when you look at the numbers, throw it out. Okay, now here's the one where the dosing is not correct. It says here, adults with type 1 diabetes eat a high-fat, atherogenic diet that is associated with coronary artery calcium, which means higher rates of heart disease. So the kicker here is that when they look at a high-fat diet, they may only go up to 32% fat, percentage of calories. And the truth is a high-fat diet is actually 65% fat minimum. That's a high-fat diet. But medicine is replete with what they call high-fat diet studies when they're actually very low-fat diet studies. Okay, so let's just skip this. The dosing is wrong. Okay, so for the next 5, we have the same pattern appearing related to general population studies, epidemiological studies, and low relative risk, low OR, low HR, hazard ratio too. So here we go. This title says it's a study, a cohort of Swedish women, and it's a food questionnaire, 12-year almost complete follow-up. So they did a food questionnaire, and then 12 years later, another food questionnaire. Throw it out. Okay, and here are the numbers. 6%, that would be a relative risk of 1.06. If it was 1.00, it means there's no benefit and no detriment. It's completely neutral. 1.00. So 1.06 is then translated into 6%. Okay, and then the other number here is 13%. It's so low, it's worthless. And they use the word associated here again, which is fine. They need to use the word associated, but let's not be confused of what that word means. It doesn't mean cause. The next one, you're doing good. Stay with me. We're almost done. The next one, low-carb diets and all-cause specific mortality. 2 cohort studies, 2 group studies. Does that mean it has double the power? No, absolutely not. It doesn't mean anything that there's 2 or 3 or 1,000 cohort studies. It's still the same garbage. They use a food frequency questionnaire right here. And then here's the numbers, 1.12, 1.23, 1.14, 1.28. They're all too low. We're out of business with this one. And then the conclusion, they use the word associated. All right, here's the next one. Here's another cohort study. Here they did a 7-day dietary record, which is better. It's only 7 days instead of 6 years or 12 years. And their numbers are this: 1.19, 1.44. It's too low. And then you use the term in the conclusion, carbohydrate restricted dietary pattern appeared to increase mortality. It's an appearance. It looks like it. Maybe. We're not sure. It's an apparition. It's an appearance. It's a ghost. We don't know. All right. Are you having fun yet? Here's the next one. Low carb diet from plant or animal sources and mortality among heart attack survivors. This is a compilation of a lot of studies. They gathered a bunch of data, for example, from the nurses' health study and then the health professional follow-up study, and the hazard ratio was 1.33. Here's another 1.51, 1.53, 1.30. Still too low. It's not 2.0. It's not 3.0, and it's not like cigarettes at 9.0 or 12.0. In the conclusion, they use the word associated again. All right, here's the last one. This is where the kicker is. This is a systematic review and meta-analysis of observational study. You can take the whole review and throw it away. And here's the numbers: 1.31, 1.10. We're out of business with this one. Okay, in the conclusion, I'm going to read it to you. This is good. Low carbohydrate diets were associated with, there's that word, they use it correctly here, associated with a significantly higher risk of all-cause mortality, blah, blah, blah. Last sentence on this. However, and every study like this should say this last sentence exactly word for word. However, this analysis is based on limited observational studies and large-scale trials on the complex interactions between low carbohydrate diets and long-term outcomes are needed. So they're saying this is not the thing. Like, this study is not what we're looking for. We need to do a trial. Okay, so there you got that right there. So, all right, now you know within 15 seconds of if a study is good. Most of them are junk, and you can practice with this. You may need to watch this video a few times to understand it. I really went through this like 5-6 times, making this video and then deleting it, making it, deleting it, so that I can like say this smoothly. It just takes practice. Okay, it's practice reading and looking at numbers and knowing the truth. All right, if you like this information, please give me a thumbs up, share, subscribe, and that's it. Take care. Bye.